Thank you for joining us on our main news on QTV. First, we'll take a look at the headlines. Acting Republican President Inongawina says the Zambian government condemns all forms of terrorism in the world. 3 people were burnt to ashes after the truck they were in overturned and caught fire along Kalomo-Zimba Road yesterday. Here now is the news in detail. With the news, my name is Machamanda. Acting Republican President Inongawina says the Zambian government condemns all forms of terrorism in the world. In a message of condolences to His Majesty King Felipe VI of the Kingdom of Spain on the death of 13 people and at least 100 others injured in the Barcelona terror attack on the 17th of August 2017, Ms. Wina says people should not condone all acts of terrorism. Ms. Wina has assured King Felipe that her government stands with the Kingdom of Spain and indeed the international community in condemning all acts of terrorism in all its manifestations. She says she learned with profound sorrow of the death of 13 people and at least 100 others who were injured in a cowardly terrorist act in Barcelona. She says on behalf of the government of Zambia, she conveys Zambia's sincere and heartfelt condolences on this tragic occurrence. The acting president says the people of Zambia are praying for the comfort of the bereaved families and the entire nation during this trying period, and she has since wished those injured a quick recovery. This is contained in a statement issued to QTV News today by Senior Private Secretary Ambassador Sheila Suela. Patriotic Front has today handed over the presidency of Council of African Political Parties, CAP, based on the organization's principle of rational leadership. The General Assembly has thanked the Patriotic Front Zambia for having provided leadership to the continental body since its inception in 2013 to date. The General Assembly saw the election of PF member of the Central Committee, Paul Monga, to the Regional Executive Committee of CAP. PF Secretary General and immediate past President of the CAP, Davis Mwila, has called for more collaboration and unity of purpose. Mr. Mwila says no one can deny that political parties have an important role to play in the construction of Africa's desired future. The PF Secretary General has further called on CAP to explore new partnerships. He has also called for what he has termed Africanization of the democracy, if democracy is to deliver development for African states. Mr. Mwila has cautioned CAP against the temptation of discrimination or discriminating anyone on account of color. This is contained in a statement issued to QTV News today by PF Media Director Sunday Chanda.
And I want to assure you, Madam President, that you will have maximum support from our country because CAP has a long way to go. And we can only succeed when we are united. We can only succeed when we are united because there are too many outside forces who want to destroy Africa. But if we are united, no one will destroy our continent. The other commitment, Madam President and Secretary General, which I want to put in place or assure you, is that in terms of the membership subscription, as Chief Executive of the Patriotic Front, immediately as we go back, we will have to start paying the subscription for us to be financially sound as an institution.
Governance activist Leslie Chikuse says printing ballot papers locally will just result in electoral conflict on suspicion of rigging the elections. Mr. Chikuse has told QTV News that when the government prints ballot papers outside the country, stakeholders, more especially the opposition political parties, cry foul that the government might have printed extra ballot papers with the intention to rig elections. He says he wonders if the opposition can be comfortable that the government printers, which is wholly controlled by the government, is allowed to print the ballot papers for the 2021 polls. He feels that this will be a recipe for the electoral conflict, saying the opposition might suspect that the party in power is planning to steal votes by printing extra ballot papers.
But I think that with the current uncertainties in the electoral process, there is need for stakeholders, consultation on how this will be done without bringing even further confusion. Because you know that when ballot papers are printed from outside, where government may not have direct influence, the certain stakeholders claim or allege that government is actually printing more ballot papers. But now, if ballot papers are going to be printed in Zambia using government printers, which is an institution which is directly managed by government, I think that it will raise a lot of queries, because there will be these allegations that they are printing even more ballot papers because of that government influence. But
3 people died on the spot after the vehicle they were in overturned on the Kalomo-Zimba road at Mayawa area, 25 kilometers north of Zimba yesterday. Southern Province Police Commissioner Boni Kapeso has identified the driver of the truck as Akoden Kaluwe, age 29, Potiphar Mungo, 32, and Redon Mulea, 25, all of Kalomo district, died on the spot after the driver failed to negotiate a corner, causing the truck to overturn. Mr. Kapeso says due to the impact after the overturning, the truck caught fire until the 3 bodies were burnt beyond recognition and the truck driver beyond repair. By press time, fire brigade, with the help of police officers, was still at the scene where postmortems are expected to be conducted and bodies buried in Kalomo, as such bodies could not be taken to a mortuary under such circumstances. He says the accident occurred at about 05:40 hours. The government has encouraged investors to invest in cotton value addition within the country. Agriculture Permanent Secretary Julius Shaw notes that 90% of the cotton exported from the country is in its raw form, which shields more revenue from farmers and the country at large. He says this would not be the case if there is value addition within the country on the crop to export already finished products like clothes and oils. He says way back the country had companies on the copper belt that would spin cotton and export valuable its products, which brought in revenue, and hopes that the same can be done this time. He has since called on the private sector to rise to the occasion and invest in the product's value addition.
Our quest actually that is a message we are pushing through. Indeed, our arm of government, which is under the government agency, which promotes investment, that let's bring in investors that are going to add value to cotton. As a country, as you know, almost 100% of our cotton is exported in raw form as lint. All they do is just gin it, and then all the lint is taken out. You remember in the old years we had companies on the copper belt that were spinning, weaving, and so forth. So we want to encourage that. We want to encourage the private sector to come in. The raw material is here. Farmers are producing raw cotton. We need to add value to it. So it's a message really also that we should encourage value addition. And I think government has stated that our quest.
Kivo's Southern Africa Region Advocacy Officer for Sustainable Diets, William Chilufya, has encouraged farmers not to relent on diversifying the agricultural sector. Mr. Chilufya says the low maize prices being offered by the Food Reserve Agency should act as an eye-opener to the farmers to venture into other croppings as opposed to producing maize only. Mr. Chilufya points out that the millet on the market is being sold at a good price and that those who produced it are profiting, and thus the need for all farmers to consider diversifying. He says even the invading of the armyworms, sorghum and millet were not affected, saying this would send a strong signal warning to the farmers to diversify.
If we understand the very disappointing crop price for maize as a call for diversification, it's a warning to the farmer that thou shalt not put your eggs in one basket. Thou shalt not put your eggs in one crop called maize. we need to diversify. Look at how much millet is costing today, and assuming that you had grown millet, look at how profitable it would be today. So it's very, very important that the farmers take these warnings seriously. It's not only the float rice, but look at also the armyworm, the way that infected us. That was also a warning to say let us diversify. Millet was not affected, sorghum was not affected, but only maize. So we've seen that maize is very expensive to produce, but again, when it comes to selling, it will give you less profit, or even none. So it's very, very important that as a nation, we think seriously about crop diversification, and we go ahead and diversify.
The Zambia Revenue Authority has increased the number of withholding value-added tax (VAT) agents and source to 58, and 16 of these are government ministries. ZRA Corporate and Communications Manager Topsy Skalinda, in a statement to QTV News, says the agents will be responsible for remitting tax directly to the authority from source. Mr. Skalinda says the move is aimed at assisting business organizations to be more tax compliant. He says businesses, entities will have their VAT payments being made by the agents for any business transactions conducted. That is directly to ZRA. He explained that this will mean that VAT remittance will be done timely and that the business entity would only have to submit returns. Mr. Skalinda states that the increase in agents will also have the way of liquidity pressure from businesses, especially suppliers who are expected to remit taxes even before the clients have paid. The ZRA Corporate and Communications Manager says this puts a big liquidity strain on the companies who may not have the money available at the time the taxes are due. Mr. Skalinda says ZRA will continue to introduce initiatives and reforms that will increase the ease with which taxes are paid, thereby helping make businesses more tax compliant. Topstar Zambia Limited says it is committed to work on the several complaints coming from clients ranging from quality of the picture and some decoders not having all the channels. Topstar Public Relations Manager Machamanda has told QTV News that due to the heavy traffic at sales outlets and other dealers, some clients were not able to get the necessary information on how to issue the Topstar decoders. Ms. Chanda says depending on the area of the person who purchased the decoder, some are unable to receive the signal. She explains that only clients along the line of rail up to Kalomo are able to receive the signal.
Is in receipt of several complaints from new clients. These are ranging from the quality of the picture as well as just accessing channels once they've purchased the Topstar decoder. And I'd like to mention that due to the heavy traffic that we experienced at sales outlets and even with our dealers, some clients were not able to get information about how to use the Topstar decoder, what channels would be available on the decoder, as well as the quality of the programs that they'd be receiving. Dependent on which part of the country you live in, you might not be able to actually access Topstar signal. The signal right now is being transmitted in towns on the Copper Belt, running down the line of rail up until Kalomo. Some towns do have Topstar signal and others do not. As you are purchasing a decoder, please advise the client, that the salesperson that you're speaking to, about where you reside so that they are able to tell you the type of signal quality that you will be receiving in your area.
The Media Network on Child Rights and Development has backed the government's decision to translate the National Development Plan into the country's local languages. Organization's Assistant Programs Officer Betty Kakoma tells Q News that it would be prudent that the plan is translated into local languages so that people may understand the country's roadmap to the development. She has charged that it is evident that the people in the remotest parts of the country are finding it difficult to understand what leaders mean when they talk about the 7th NDP. Ms. Kakoma states that the entire country may not be as literate as some leaders may assume, hence the need to translation of the plan for effective inclusiveness. She has since appealed to government to recognize NGOs and community-based groups on massive sensitizations of the plan.
According to the observations that I've made so far, in as far as we're trying to unpack the 7th National Development Plan, I'm thinking one of the things that is a challenge is language, which means the whole Zambia is not as literate as we think, and most of the majority of Zambians obviously need a lot of education about it so that they can really understand that that's their document. Whatever has been submitted in that document is for their lives and the livelihood of their children. So as an organization, I feel there is so much need that the government needs to put in place means and ways on how they can be able to disseminate this information. Let's talk about children with disabilities or people with disabilities. Those are the people that obviously will have a bigger challenge because they're in the marginalized group. So we need to make sure that there should be strategies to get to help them really get to know how they'll be able to understand this information that has been packaged. And also just the majority of the community. I think the language that we obviously know, right now we're in Matero, we know that Matero obviously, most of the people obviously are used to maybe let's say Nyanja or maybe let's say Bemba, but let's talk about the other provinces, maybe the rural areas. That's where we have a challenge, and we need to make sure that government identifies NGOs or community-based organizations that work in those areas and get to actually tap into the concept of sharing this document. It's a very important document that will change our country and make people think together and make people...
The Kalulushi Municipal Council says farmers in the district have strongly benefited from the presidential milling initiative planned by President Edgar Lungu. Kalulushi Mayor Rashida Mulenga tells Q News that with the plant in the district, farmers do not have a problem with where to take the excess maize from the previous farming season. She says despite the reduction of maize prices by the Food Reserve Agency this year, farmers will yield profits after value addition from the presidential milling plant. Ms. Mulenga adds that the milling plant has not just benefited the people of Kalulushi, but the Copperbelt province at large. She has, however, bemoaned the lack of modern infrastructure such as shopping malls and banking facilities in the districts.
For us in Kalulushi, we have an impending construction of the new Central Business District, where we've actually planned for commercial plots, and the other part we've planned for those are industrial plots. So on the industrial part, we're actually looking at value addition. Already we're thankful to this great government under the able leadership of our president, Mr. Edgar Chagwa-Lungu, that they've given us a presidential milling plant, meaning the farmers in our area, all those farming blocks, the ones that are cultivating maize, have somewhere to take their maize. Not only will it benefit the people of Kalulushi, but also the province at large. In another way, it will also create job opportunity. The commercial plots is where we're planning to put shopping mall. We don't have facilities such as a ShopRite. We don't have banking facilities. And we also want to put up a modern bus station, modern market, and all these facilities where our people can have services, can get services from. I think it also has to start with all of us.
The Felix Mutati-led MMD youths have appealed to the opposition UPND and the ruling Patriotic Front leaders to build a consensus on a number of issues of economic development of the country if it is to be achieved. MMD National Youth Chairperson Gerard Chilwa tells Q News that at this stage, a dialogue between the two leaders should be inevitable if the country's political and developmental agenda is to thrive. He says it is not progressive for the people to live in a country filled with high political tension. Hence the need for the two leaders to put their differences aside. Mr. Chilwa says the opposition leader should be willing to sit on the same table with President Edgar Lungu and discuss issues that are affecting the country politically.
Dialogue. The word dialogue is inevitable. We can't avoid it. And for us as a country, if we are to grow economically, there is need for us to build a consensus on a number of things, because we cannot live in a country where there is high political tension. So I think my appeal as diehards is that President Hakainde Hichilema should and willingly accept to sit on the same table with His Excellency President Edgar Chagwa-Lungu so that they can find lasting solutions to the problems that are affecting our country. And
then we end the news, but before I take a run, here is a recapitulation of stories in the headlines. Acting Republican President Inonge Wina says the Zambian government condemns all forms of terrorism in the world. 3 people were burnt to ashes after the truck they were in overturned and caught fire along Kaloma Zimba Road yesterday. That will do it for the news this evening. Thank you so much for your time. Bye-bye and have a good